Hello, welcome on to Complete Notary Mentorship. How's everyone doing? So nice to see all your faces today. I missed you dearly. I had a great vacation in Columbus, Ohio. Shout out Columbus. It was great. But I missed you guys so much, and I'm so excited to welcome you back. Alessio, this is our fourth training together.
Yep.
So Alessio's been doing an amazing series with us, thanks to Barbara as well, uh, going into a deep dive into signing. So if you've ever wanted to do a purchase with another notary, Alessio's been giving us that great point of view. So drop a thank you in the chat for Alessio for taking the time to just go through a packet and answer any question we have as a notary, showing us where those little initial lines might be or where the sign here might be a little confusing. So today we switched it up on you last minute. That's all thanks to me. I changed it today from a seller's package to a home equity loan because Alessio wants to share the difference between a HELOC and home equity loan signing, which I had no idea there was a difference. So I'm excited to go through this packet today. I'm going to drop the link right now a couple times. I just finished redacting these documents 10 minutes ago. So no, you are not missing on anything. I just uploaded them. I just dropped the link so you could download, take notes. If this is your first time doing a training with Alessio, he's going to be sharing his screen and going through the same documents you have access to in the chat. So if you want to follow along, take notes on your own paper, take this time now to download the documents onto your device or download them on your device. I'll be in the chat. And so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them there. And at the end of this training, we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A. So I want to encourage you, ask your questions out loud, no matter how easy of a question you think it is, just ask it. If you have that question, so does someone else on this call. So thanks for being brave enough to ask. Let's go ahead and get started. Alessio, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to get started with our home equity line. Sorry, not even home equity line of credit. I'm already messing up. So home equity loan signing. Let's go ahead and get started, and I'll be in the chat supporting you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Zoe. So just to kind of give you a little background of what home equity loans are, very similar to home equity line of credits. I'm going to do a little comparison before we actually jump into the documents. But home equity loans is a type of consumer debt that allows homeowners to borrow against the equity of their residence. So they can either do it through a HELOC, which is a line of credit. Think of it like your credit card. You have an open line of credit against your home with HELOCs. When you have a home equity, home equity line of credit is a basically like your credit card. It's open credit that you're using your home as equity to borrow against. And with the loan, you're basically taking a loan against the equity of the home itself. It might sound a little confusing, and hopefully after we go through this, you'll actually see the difference. So with HELOCs, that was the last training that I did. Again, it's a line of credit. With loans, it's dispersed in a lump sum disbursement. So people will elect on how much they want to take the loan out for, and they do it in a lump sum payment or disbursement. And the interest rates on the home equity loans are fixed. Whereas in the home equity line of credits, those loans are variable, and it depends on when they take the loan out and how much time it takes for them to pay it back. It's going to be a variable rate. In regards to closing costs, they can either be paid by the borrowers or the lenders. And when the lender pays for it, they basically provide credits for the cost of the loan. So it's all, you'll see it in the closing disclosure if there are any credits that are applied. And really, home equity loans could be used for practically anything. So either a new roof, home remodeling, college tuition, paying down credit cards, any large purchases, same exact way that people would use the home equity line of credits. For the use, it's the same for the home equity loans. The only difference when we're going to go through this package, and if you recall from a couple weeks ago when we did the HELOC training, you saw there's truth in lending an agreement. That's the promise to pay. For the HELOCs, for the home equity loans, we're going to see a secondary mortgage loan. and also the note, either or actually. You may see both, you may see one or the other, but that's basically the promise to pay the loan that they're taking the lump sum disbursement for. And we're seeing a lot of the HELOCs and home equity loans come through more so today because people's values of their homes increased, which means they have more equity in their home that they can use against for these type of products. So they're not as bulky as, let's say, a refinance or a purchase. So they're not going to pay as much as you see for a refinance, but they still pay a pretty good amount for the amount of time that you're spending on these. I would probably say the smaller packets, they can run between 20, 30 pages upwards to 50, 60, 70 pages, but they go really quick. So without further ado, I'm going to present my screen. So everybody's going to be able to see this. And what I always say and what I've said in the past training sessions that I have, it's important that you read through the instructions, either if they're the notary instructions that are within the packet or when you get the order and they provide you some instructions. Make sure you go through each of those sections to make sure that you're either initialing where you may not see an initial line, but they're asking you to initial or sign or collect an ID, whatever it is, you just want to make sure you're going through those instructions to make sure that you're checking all the boxes off, and it's not going to cost you an extra trip to go back because you missed something or you forgot to collect something because it wasn't in the instructions and you just never followed it. Also, what's really important is if there's legal size documents, you're printing on legal size, and they'll tell you in the instructions either if it's a mix with letter and legal, you're printing the way that they're telling you to print, and color ink. If you're in a state that requires a specific ink color, you're going to follow your specific state requirements. But for example, in the state of New Jersey, we can use either black or blue. But if the instructions tell you to use blue, make sure you're using blue, because if you're using black, it may cost you to go back and redo a re-sign out of your own dime, because they're not going to pay you for that mistake that you made because it was in the instructions. So those are just the things that you want to look at. So just in the first page, these are just the notary instructions for this one lender in the packet. Just make sure, again, you're checking these boxes off to make sure that everything is good. And then this is just a letter that the borrowers received. This doesn't require any signatures whatsoever. So what I typically do is the first couple pages, if there's any notary instructions, any letters to the signers, any closing instructions for the closing agent. Again, we're closers, we're signing agents, we're the notary, but we're not the closing agent. That's somebody from either the title company or the lender that once they receive the documents, they know how to close out the loan. So I always paperclip them and just put them on either on top, or if they're in between the documents, just paperclip them. So when you get to them, you can easily just flip them over. It's not something you have to present to the signers to look at or to sign or anything like that, because it's not really for them. And then the reason that we do these series is so that you become familiar with these documents. So as you're going through them, you're explaining it. I always say pick up maybe a bullet or two, no more than 3 bullets on a document. You explain it to them, because if you just give them documents to sign, you're going to sit there while they read the whole document. So if you're going through it, you provide a couple of high levels bullets on these documents, then your signing is going to go very efficiently and smoothly. So we start off with the mortgage with this document, and this basically just says it's a security instrument that gets filed with the county clerk's office. So it's going to list the borrower's information right over here. And by the way, if you do want to make this bigger on your screen, what you could do is you can do a control, and with your mouse, you can go up or down, and you can actually expand it a little bit bigger if you're having a hard time seeing the document. So the mortgage document, I point out where the borrowers are, who the lender is, the amount of the loan, which is going to be listed right over here. And then this is just basically saying that if they fail to make their mortgage payments, the lender can come after them for the loan. Also, the property is insured and there's no hazardous materials. So I basically just fan this out in front of them. There are 7 pages, and I pull out the signature page and put it to the side. So this way, after, if they want to go through the mortgage document, they can certainly do so, but just explaining it to them with those 3 bullets, they're basically just going to sign and date. And there's going to be 2 pages for the acknowledgements that need to be notarized. One is for Christy, the other one is for Edward. So just make sure that you're notarizing all the acknowledgements that are in here, and that the names match with what's on the first page of the mortgage document. Sometimes the lenders or title companies do make errors and they may leave out an initial. So just make sure that everything looks right if it's typed in. If it requires you to fill it in, just make sure that you're filling it in exactly how you see it on the signature line and also on the first page of the mortgage. So after they sign, date it, and I notarize these 2 documents, we move on to the next one. And then this is a secondary mortgage loan. So here on the first line, this is basically the note. This is their promise to pay. It has the loan amount, so I point it out. It has their principal and interest, which is going to be right over here, what their interest rate is. And then they have between the 1st and the 15th of each month to make a payment, which is actually listed right over here, which is within their grace period. So they can make a payment between the 1st and the 15th of each month without being penalized. Anything after the 15th, they assess a 4% fee, which I always point that out. And there's also the promise to repay without being penalized, which in some contracts, it's a little bit differently. For this one, it's not your typical language. But if it's not something that you're familiar with, just go through the document once. So this way you're comfortable in pointing out exactly where everything is. And this just basically says that if they do make any additional payments towards principal or pay off the loan sooner, they're not going to get penalized. Everything else are just loan terms. I always pull out the signature page, put it to this next to the set of documents that they're signing, and then I have them sign. Seal doesn't mean stamp or anything like that. That's a seal just basically means their signature. So you do not have to stamp this. Please do not stamp this. I've seen where notaries are adding their seal to this, and these documents are going to get rejected and they're going to have you re-sign it. So just make sure that they're just signing it and that's it. If one spouse signs it and dates it and the other one doesn't date it, some lenders are okay with the date. Just make sure that the other spouse then adds a date so they're both consistent. There is 1 or 2 lenders out there that are very specific, saying make sure that the note is not dated. And let's say they date it after you tell them not to date it, which happens all the time. Remember, there's that second stack of documents. So when you give them, when you walk in, you're giving them that stack of documents for their records. Pull it out of their stack and then replace it with the one that they made an error on, and just make sure you're watching them so they're not dating that one either. And then we move on to the closing disclosure. This shows them that it is for a 15-year fixed loan. It is a conventional. I point out the loan amounts, the interest rates, monthly principal and interest. There's no prepayment penalties, so I always point this one out too. And then I just show them again what their final monthly payment is. Usually with home equity loans, there's no escrow that's taken out. So either if they have their first mortgage, that's where the escrow is taken out for the homeowner's insurance and taxes, or they just pay it on their own. And then the closing costs and then the cash to close. So after the 165 minus the closing costs, this is what they're going to be getting back. And then this is just a breakdown of the closing costs itself. I always just go through this real quick. These are all lender paid. You'll on the far right, you see the L next to these fees and charges. That's just basically that they're paying for, the lender's paying for these fees right over here. And really what the closing cost is for this particular closing, it's really the interest that they're paying from 9/12 to 10/1. So that's why they have a closing cost of $1,001.49. If there's any payoffs for these loans, they're going to be listed here, but this is just basically a cash out for the full amount. Page 4 and 5 are just loan disclosures, and then I always have them sign the last page. Sometimes you're going to see a couple different scenarios. You're going to see a closing disclosure that's one for the wife, one for the husband or the other spouse. But if you don't see their name on the signature line, don't have them sign it. It is done on purpose for that reason, and it's not a mistake. So if you only see one spouse on the closing disclosure, it means that there's a second disclosure right after that too. Obviously, when you go through the documents beforehand, you're going to see that there's the two closing disclosures, one for each spouse. You give them both copies to sign their own and date it. This one has two copies. And if you notice on the signature line, they're both spouses are signing it. So for this example, you're having them sign both of them. And just make sure when you get it back that you're going through each page to make sure that there's no initials that are missing. If some sections require initials in general, not just the closing disclosure, but just with any document or on the signature lines that all of the signatures are captured and dated correctly. And then this is the loan application, the 1003. This is they're applying for joint credit, so they are going to initial on the initial line, and make sure that they're only initialing their own section. The other spouse doesn't have to initial the other spouse's signature. So Christy's going to initial hers. Edward is going to initial his. So on the first page, this is Christy's section. She's going to initial below the two next to your initial. And I just basically say this is the application is when you first started the process of taking the loan out. This is where they collected all the information. So I have them verified their social security number, which is going to be listed right over here, date of birth, and really just everything else is really current to the time that they took the loan out. On the second page is Edward's section. So he's going to initial right over here. And then I fan it out. This is 12 pages. So I fan out the first page, then the second page, and then I go to where the signature page is. And then I fan this out, which is page 8. And then that should be it. Sometimes just keep an eye out for the last page. Sometimes below section 9 for the loan originator's information, there's going to be a signature line also for the borrowers. Just make sure that you're going through each and every page to make sure that all the signatures are captured. And then I just hand it to them where they sign and date. They're going to hand it back to you again. As I go through the stack, I'm going through each single page just to make sure that all the signatures are captured and dated. Affidavit of identity, they each have their own. Basically, when since there's the joint credit, both of their socials were used. These are going to be the different variations of their names that come up. So whatever comes through the credit bureaus, this is where that information is going to be listed. So they're going to sign respectfully above their signature line, and then we notarize the bottom pages, the bottom of the two pages. This is a consent to use their tax return information. So if they provided any tax documents, they're basically, this is the formality that the lender could be using those tax records, or with the 1040, once they, the 40, I'm drawing a blank right now, 4506 form, which I'll talk about that in the next couple minutes. But with the 4506 form, if the lender needs any additional tax records from the IRS, then basically with this form, they're consenting for the lender to use those tax returns that they're getting from the IRS. And then this is an authorization for direct deposit of the mortgage refund. So these folks didn't really have any lender cost, but let's say if there's any recording fees that were collected and the borrower's paying out of it for, from the closing cost, that basically just says that after disbursement is completed and settlement is completed, sorry, not disbursement, but settlement, and all the recording fees are collected and the escrow is about to be closed out, if there's any extra money sitting in that escrow account, they're going to be getting it back in the form of a check. So just make sure, for example, I already know what this form is, so I read it and I explained it to them. They're going to send a check unless they want the funds wired. And at that point, if they do want to wire, they're going to put their banking information here. The next form is another disbursement authorization form, but this is for the proceeds of the loan. So if you go back to the closing disclosure, they're going to be getting back the 163,998.51. This form is used for that purpose. So they're asking, the lender's asking the signers how they want to receive their proceeds. It could be in a form of a check. If it's a check, they're going to check off the last box. Or if they want the funds wired either to their savings or checking account, they're going to put their account information there. So after the disbursement day, which is going to be 3 days, they're going to see those funds in their account. They're both going to sign and date. And one other thing, I'm just going to go back to the closing disclosure real quick. I always point out this date also, disbursement date. I usually talk about this either on the closing disclosure or once we get to the notice of right to cancel. So after their 3-day rescission period, that's when they're going to be getting either their funds into their account. If it's going to be a check, it's going to be mailed or overnighted. If there's going to be any payoffs, it's going to be done on the for this example, the 12th of September, which is 3 days after the 3 business days to close out or cancel if they wanted to cancel. And the error and omissions agreement just basically says that if the lender forgot to give them any forms to sign or anything needs to be re-signed for whatever reason, these documents are scanned over and over again. So if something gets destroyed during scanning or FedEx loses the package, this basically just assures that the borrowers are going to work with the lender to get those documents re-signed for whatever reason and sent back in a timely manner. So this way it does not delay any funding and the lender is compliant with any regulations regarding the loan itself. And this one requires notarizations. Again, there's one for each. So this is not a mistake. You're going to be notarizing both of these acknowledgements, one for Christy and one for Edward. This is just a breakdown of their first monthly payment, just has them principal and interest. There's no escrow, so it just shows them what their monthly payment is. Beginning on, for this example, it's going to be listed right over here on November 1st. These are the notice of right to cancel. Each spouse has their own. So I basically put it in front of them and I just say that you do have 3 business days from the date of today. So after I leave, if it's something you no longer want to pursue, I always point out the date that they have. So for this example, they sign on the 7th and they have until midnight of September 11th. So I say you do have until midnight of September 11th to cancel if you wanted to. And if you wanted to cancel, on the second page where it says I wish to cancel, that's where you would sign it, date it, send it in. All the paperwork that they're signing today becomes null and void. And then I put my hand over that box and I said, don't sign there today. You're going to be signing below it, just acknowledging that I did explain to you what your notice of right to cancel is, and that I gave you your copies, which are in your stack that I handed to them when I walked in. I put my hand there because people see that their name is listed there and they start signing. And if that's the case, if there's any markings within the I wish to cancel box, that basically cancels a transaction. So if Christy just goes and makes a mark and then I'm like, oh no, you're not supposed to sign there, that's an indication that she wants to cancel. So you want to make sure that their intention is not to cancel. 10 out of 10 times when you're in front of them getting these documents signed, that is not their intention. Either if something later on comes up right before disbursement date, the interest rate, they find a better interest rate, whatever reason that they have that they want to cancel, that's when they cancel, but they never cancel at the table unless they, when you go through the closing disclosure and there's something that doesn't sit well with them, at that point is where they may just say, hey, you know, we need to pause this and work with the closing or either their closing agent or the lender to make sure that they get whatever agreed interest rate or money, whatever it is. at that point. But when you get to this form, they're not wanting to cancel. So if they make any markings here, just make sure you swap it out with a clean sheet from their stack and they're signing in the correct section. And then this is just an owner's affidavit, just basically saying that if they apply for any other loans or if they have any liens that they know of, but it didn't come up during that underwriting process, they can list it here. But this form just basically says that they're the owners of the property and they're responsible for any liens and debts associated with the property itself. The property is insured and they're going to be making their monthly payments on this home equity loan. They're both going to sign the second page and we notarize the bottom portion of it. Here, you're actually putting in their names here. So you're going to put Christy's name here. After Anne, you're going to put Edward. This is just references and time requirements. Notice this does not require any signatures. This is just really saying good faith estimate was replaced with loan estimate. I don't really show them this because it doesn't really pertain to anything. They're not signing because everything that we went over the documents, we already went over all these definitions, so I can just flip it over. And then these are the 4506 forms, and I always, these are the last set of documents. So I just make sure that Christy has her own, Edward has her own, so they're going to be signing their own. They're not going to be signing each other's. If you see a 4506 form where both spouse names are here, then at that point is where they're going to be signing the one form for both husband and wife in this case. So above Edward, he's going to sign here, date it. Make sure this box is checked off. The signatory attests box, which is right over here. And you're always going to see these in the instructions to make sure that this box is checked. So if it's not checked, sometimes it's automatically checked. This is required, and they will kick this back if it's not checked. And if Christy's name was listed as a spouse on this particular form, it would be printed here. She would sign it and date it. But if her name is not listed, then at that point, don't add any additional names unless either your state requires it or the lender or title company sending you a separate note or it's an instruction saying that both spouses have to sign it. So just make sure you're looking at those instructions and following all the rules. And that's basically it. I mean, this was 55 pages. It goes by pretty quick, even after explaining what each document is. And that's why I'm enjoying these, the HELOCs and the home equity loans a lot because they go very quick. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to open up the question and answers session. Actually, I'm going to leave this up. So if there's any questions that come up, I can always reference a document.
Great. Thank you so much, Alessio. Give a round of applause for Alessio because who is just as amazing, Alessio, that was willing to go through each document and talk to you like a notary. And I loved his short explanations or 1 or 2 sentences, makes it feel a lot less overwhelming. And just knowing the purpose of the document and not each little detail. I also love how if it doesn't require a signature, it doesn't have any important information that needs to be discussed there, simply flip it over. You know, it's very seamless when you go through these signings. So thank you so much, Alessio. Now it's time for live Q&A. Before we do, Alessio had some great notes at the beginning of the session. He talked about what home equity loans, their purpose are, who typically gets them, what to look out for. So I just dropped the link in the chat. You take that survey. It takes less than a minute. It takes a few seconds, and then you'll get Alessio's notes. So great job, Alessio. Let's go ahead and get started with live Q&A. Now, if anyone has any questions, this is the time for you to ask. At the bottom of your screen to ask a question, go to the reactions button, then click raise hand. That puts you in line to ask your question next. So I'll be calling on each of you individually to ask your question out loud. Please say the page number or the name of the document so Alessio can pull it up and explain it at the same time. Allow you to unmute. Awesome. Pamela, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderfully, thank you. Good to see you and Alessio again. I love your presentation.
Thank you.
Alessio, hopefully my questions are quick. You is the home equity loan mainly, unless the home is paid off, it's a second that they're taking. It's like a second that they're taking out on their home from the equity.
Correct.
Okay. And is that mainly what it is, unless, of course, they have that home paid off? Is it still called a home equity loan?
It is because they're not refinancing and they're not, that's the terminology and that's the product that they're taking out. Now, if they're refinancing or doing a cash out,
Uh-huh.
with the mortgage, the interest rate is going to be lower than the equities. So you're going to see that the equity interest rates are much higher. For example, this is
Oh,
11.66%. So if they already have a mortgage, they're taking out a
wow.
second mortgage to use the equity. Um,
I didn't
if
even notice
it's
that interest. Wow.
Yeah, they're going to be much higher. With the equity. So it's really depending on the individual consumers on what product they want to take out. If they Most likely they already have a first mortgage, so this is why they're doing the equity to take out additional equity on the property.
Uh-huh.
If it's free and clear, they may refinance at a lower rate, and they're better off, but it's not our place to kind of just advise them on what they're doing.
And somebody in the chat had an interesting question that caught my eye. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it for them, unless
Sure.
they're on there. Has there ever been a time when you came across a document in a packet that you didn't understand? And
Uh,
if so, how did you handle it?
Yes, so that's a good question. What I typically do is I'm pretty seasoned, so I've been doing this for quite a while. But when I first started, I always had the opportunity to go through each document, and I did either my research or asked around. We have a great network of notaries through LSS within our ambassadorships for each individual state. So if anyone has any questions on a document that you're not familiar with, reach out to the resources and just make sure you get your questions answered before you go to the table. Um, this way, you know what you're talking about. And for those examples where you're at the table and you don't know the answer, don't try to answer it. If you don't know the answer, do not just come up with any answer because you're going to get in trouble for that. Reach out to the hiring company that hired you, the lender, the loan officer, and make sure you get those questions answered correctly.
Good advice. I know that lately I've been jumping on signing order and in their job board and accepting a lot of assignments, but not being chosen. But some of them lately have been for the same day, and I'll sometimes go, oh God, I don't know if I can do this because
Yeah.
what if it comes up not having done one before? It's like, okay, I'm going to take it, but I haven't been picked yet.
I know. Take it when you can. And even if you're just
Afraid.
flipping through the PDF as you're printing, this way you're like, okay, I know what this is. Okay, I know what to expect. Okay, there's two closing disclosures. Okay, so as you're printing, you're going through this because what else are you going to be doing as you're printing, right? So
Correct. Correct.
just spend that 5-10 minutes just going through the PDF if you can't get through each document, and just familiarize yourself with whatever the document is.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alessio. You're
You're
always
welcome.
on.
Thank you, Pamela.
Great questions, Pamela. Thank you so much. Hi, Judy. How are you?
Hello, how are you? It's good to see both of you all. Hope you
Likewise.
all had a nice time off. I know you did, Zoe, but I hope Alessio did too. He didn't have to be burdened with us. So I have a few questions. I know you're shocked. So number one, go down to a real basic. So you did touch upon the fact about color ink, but
Mhm.
in this particular set of instructions, it did not identify one.
Yeah.
So do you then have to speak to the person who gave you the signing to find out?
So if they're not in the instructions, I default to blue. Reason
Default.
is we do a lot of scan backs in the industry. So with the blue, ink. Every time the documents are scanned, who's ever reviewing those documents knows that those scans are original.
Okay, makes sense to me.
Yep,
Um,
that's my thought process with that.
About the rescission notice. So my question is really basic on this one as well, but I know that there have been 2 and 3 copies in other packages, and this one only has 1.
Yep.
So my question is, am I just leaving them 1?
So this one actually has 3, I think it is, and I'm glad you brought this up. So since they're getting their own package and it has all the notice of right to cancels in there, so either if there's 1, 2, or 3, they have everything. So whatever's in your packet, you get them all signed
And return all of them.
and return all of them. So if there's 2 of them or 3 of them, I have them sign all 3 of them because they're in their packet. They also have 3 of them. Each lender is very different on what their expectation is. So I would just get every document signed. And I'm glad you brought this up because separate to the notice of right to cancel, for example, if there's a W-9 in these packets and there's 6 pages of the W-9 because the first page is a signature and
Right.
page 2 to 6 is just instructions, don't take the liberty of taking out page 2 of 6 because if they send you 100 pages, they're going to expect 100 pages back in that scan. And if there's pages that are missing because you took out because they're instructions per se, they're going to flag it and they're going to be like, what's going on? And they're not going to use you again. So whatever you print is what you scan back, and whatever you're going through each page and wherever there's a signature line, don't leave it blank. That's my advice. Yeah.
Okay. I always have difficulty on these pages because there's so much redacted, so much black on here to actually see exactly where things are getting initialed. So and I know you went through some of it, but I was still behind on another page, so I didn't make it to that. I think that was actually trying to think. I'm going through my documents here, seeing what it was where you told
The
us that
application was the only page, the only pages I needed to be initialed. Yeah.
Okay. And so can you show me again where exactly that was?
Yeah, absolutely. So have it up on the screen. So on the first page of the application, you're going to see personal information 1A, and then you have the person's name. And the reason there's a lot of redactions because there's a lot of PII information here that it just it only makes sense to black everything out.
Sure.
So where it says type of credit, if you're applying for joint credit, there's 2 borrowers. Below the 2, it says your initial. That's where they're initialing.
Okay. Okay.
There are some, and then you want to find where the other borrower's information is. So for example, this is on page 2, and they're going to initial in their own respective section right over here. Some lenders, even though it's for individual credits, technically they do not have to initial because they're initialing. It says each borrower intends to apply for joint credit, right? So that in itself is saying that if there's 2 borrowers, then they're both going to be initialing their own section. There's a few lenders out there that still require, if it's even one individual credit, one person applying for individual credit, they still want that section to be initialed. So make sure you're reading those instructions because it would be listed in there.
Okay. That's just gonna vary from one to the other.
Exactly. And until you're comfortable with whatever each lender is saying, just make sure you have a habit of reading the instructions. And even if you're comfortable with that packet, they may sometimes change their rules or whatever they're looking for. Just skim through the instructions to make sure that nothing changed.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's the end of my questions. You've done a marvelous job with all these, and I am so grateful because I feel a lot more confident than what I did before we started this series.
I'm very happy, Judy. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's the whole intention was for these series, is so everybody becomes more and more comfortable in their own shoes when you're going through these documents. It's going to make your life much easier. So thank you.
Thanks for showing up today, Judy and everyone. So glad these are helping you feel more confident. And these are all such amazing questions. I want to encourage you guys, support each other when you guys are asking questions. That was a great question, Judy. Pamela, that was an awesome question. Root each other on. So let's go ahead and jump to Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you. Go ahead, ask your biggest questions to Alessio.
So, Alessio, I'm actually going to talk about the same form, the Uniform Residential Loan Application. So I did my second signing last night. And it was
Congratulations.
really late. It was really a last minute thing, and obviously they had no one else because it was my second signing, and I don't think they really wanted to hire me. But I did not sleep at all because of this form. Because I had to call them because of the initials that you were just talking about. And it was one borrower. And so I called and I was like, does he still need to initial here? And so took them a few minutes to figure it out. And then they were like, yes, he still needs to initial here. But then there was something that said there needed to be a signature on this page.
Not on this page, but on the bottom of section 6 is where they're
No, it said the first page of the Uniform Residential Loan Application. And I was like, well, there's no, I mean, I scoured that thing and just had a heart attack.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. So the 1003, the Uniform Residential Loan Application changed maybe 2 years ago, and the original one was only 4 pages. And if they probably didn't have the Uniform Residential Loan Application in front of them, so they were assuming that you're looking at the old application, and then the old application, and I think I don't know if there's any examples out there to show you. I can't show you because I don't think what I have is redacted. But you would see a signature line on top, and it's very similar to this language right over here. So instead of the initials, it would say each borrower intends to apply for joint credit. It would be listed like somewhere on the top of this form. And instead of 12 pages, it would only be 4 pages, and there's 2 signature lines, and that's where they were probably indicating for them to sign it. That signature line now went away, and it's requiring initials.
So weird enough, it was only 4 pages, but it looked exactly like this. It was only initials, no signature.
Yeah, without seeing it, I can't guide you with it, but I mean, if there's a signature line, it would be on the top.
Which is what I thought it would be, like right at the top, because I remember in one of the other videos that I watched with Mark that it was at the top.
Mhm.
And I literally slept. I did not sleep at all, just thinking about this form. and I'm so glad that I was able to get on tonight and ask this question, because it's been weighing on me all day. And I reached out to the signing service to make sure, because I did the scan backs at like 11:30 last night, and I heard nothing, and I was like, okay, let me reach out. And then they said everything looked fine so far. And I was like, okay, well,
Then you're golden. If they say everything looks fine, then most times they already looked for everything, and you're fine. You captured all the signatures and initials.
okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask. And honestly, that was really the only question I had. And I was just thankful that this form was actually in this packet. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yay, I'm so happy for you, Elizabeth. Congratulations. You worry because you care. And so I'm glad we have a space that you can ask these questions. So keep us updated on your journey and keep crushing it, Elizabeth. Thanks for inspiring us today, too. Next is Jennifer, then Phil. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Hi, Alessio and Zoe and LLS family. I have a question on the acknowledgement, I guess maybe the first one from the mortgage.
Okay.
Any one of those. It says notary public and then notary public name. Is that where you sign and then one where you print your name?
Correct. So you're going to be signing above the notary public. That's a signature line. When you see name, you're going to print your name there. You're going to put your commission, and then this notarial act was completed in person. So you want to make sure that you're checking off in person.
Okay. I have one more question that
Yep.
is it
Hold on
necessarily
hold on to that one question because I want to pull up another acknowledgement that's a little bit different. So this one right here, you don't see the boxes and you're not going to see that notary public name, right? So
right?
here you're going to sign. What I typically do is if I always print my name below the signature line. It's just a habit that I do, even though it's on the stamp. So you can print if that's the kind of habit that you have. You print next to or below the signature line. You put your commission expiration date there, and that's it. And then obviously you put your stamp.
If you don't print your name, is it
No, I,
incomplete?
my signature isn't legible. It's a scribble. So at least this way they know that I signed it, and then I also printed my name so they know that's me.
Okay.
That's the reason that I do it. But if you actually write out your name, every letter, then you don't have to do that.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And what's the other question you had?
It's not necessarily on these documents, but I've had a document where they have two signature lines, and at the bottom there's an initial. And usually when you have two initials, there's two initial lines, but it's just one initial line. So if their document has two signatures and one initial line, does that mean only one of the borrowers sign, or they both fit their initials on that
Yeah,
one?
they both have to initial in that same section. So for your example, two signatures, and you just see the one line there, they just never meet that second line, so they both initial.
Okay.
Or if you have like two lines, but there's only one signer because their name is printed under the first line, they're signing it, but there's nothing on the second line.
Mhm.
But then let's say there's two lines for initials, they only have to initial the first one because there's only one signer.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
You're welcome.
Great question. And Jennifer, what state are you in?
I am in California, San Diego County.
Woo, okay, great question. The reason I asked is double check our state's handbook. We need certain verbiage and boxes in our notary certificates. So you
Yeah.
could possibly get loan documents from New Jersey, but it doesn't follow the guidelines for a California notary certificate. And so you would attach our California notary acknowledgement. So always have extras printed out in your notary bag, extra jurats and acknowledgements. And it's really easy to attach. And then you'd cross out the one that is not applicable where you're doing your notarization. So just a tip for you, make sure it's a California certificate.
Yes, definitely. I noticed it was slightly different than what I'm used to seeing, but I always definitely have those extras in my bag.
Awesome. Yeah, this would definitely be a great case to use those. And for any other states out there, check your notary laws and make sure that you can fill out which notary certificates so that if you ever have that moment at a table, you're like, okay, this doesn't look right. Make sure you know when to whip out your own acknowledgements or drafts. So great question, Jennifer. I'm really glad you pointed that out. Awesome. Next is Phil. Hi, Phil. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. What is your biggest question for Alessio?
Well, actually, I got a few. So, going through what I follow the today's document. The thing is, I just did my first signing. It was a refinance, and I wish I could say that it was successful, but I'm kind of being vulnerable here to share it with everybody. Some of the things I want to go over that I had questions on is a couple of things I don't remember going through in the course, but also the communication with. To be honest with you, I don't really know who I got the sign in from. It was through the platform. I don't know who I was speaking to. So I just want to go over a couple of things. On page 24, we're talking about the joint signers.
Yeah.
So that initial box, is that, I don't remember ever hearing about that. I probably did, but when you only have one signer, are they still initialing it? Because on my document, that top box was already checked,
Mhm.
and so I didn't have them sign initial that.
Yeah, so it really depends on the lender. So if they're applying for individual credit, most times that's not required. Sometimes it is. If you are at the table, you don't see anything in your instructions, and this one doesn't require a signature page or a signature on it. My rule of thumb is to get it initialed, you rather over initial than under initial. And then once you get a response back from the signing service or whoever hired you and gave you that response to your question, then you can replace it with a blank page if it doesn't need to be, when I say blank, just a clean page of page 24 that doesn't have their initial on it.
Okay. And then the certificates, if on here we have a certificate for each borrower, is it common for them to be split up or to be, and if they're all on one, are we just having them do one?
Are you talking about the acknowledgements?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's
so
the,
you're talking
but
about like one for Christy, one for Edward, correct?
correct.
Yeah, so again, this is a lender specific where they have one acknowledgement for each person. So as you're going through the documents and you see one for Christy and then you see one for Edward, since their name was already typed, that means that they each have their own and you're just filling each one of them for one for Christy and one for Edward.
But if there was only one, should I take it
Then
upon myself to give them each one or just take it at face?
nope, take it as faith, and usually either their names will be printed on one, so you'll see Christy and Edward listed here, or if it's blank, then they're asking you to print their names, both names on the one acknowledgement.
Okay. And then this one going through with the documents with you on the 1006, or no, sorry, not the 1006, the application
Okay, yeah, the 1003, yeah.
1003.
Yep.
So the no, it wasn't that one. It was the 1006. I'm sorry.
The
So on their
4506 form.
yeah, so the last section in section 9 where they sign at that box, I did not have them check that.
So you're talking about the 4506, right?
Yes, it's that form right there. So that checkbox, I didn't know that was a checkbox. I thought that was indicating.
Yeah. So
So
if
that
it's not
was
checked off, there's one or two things. They can just check it off because if there's a correction agreement, they may do that on the signer's behalf, or they may kick this back to you saying, okay, have them check it off an initial.
because I scanned those in, and the person that I was ended up talking with, he just kept telling me everything's fine, and now we're going through this, and my stomach sank when you said that needed to be checked. So I know it
Well,
wasn't.
if they're saying that everything is fine, as I was just telling, it was Elizabeth that I was telling, um, then most likely they're okay with the documents that you already submitted to them. And that's something that they can either fix on their own or they can get it done outside of going back to you and asking that to be redone. So you should be okay.
Okay,
Don't lose sleep over it.
I did. And then I'm sorry,
But
there's
we
another
learn
one.
from
So
our mistakes, right? Because we're going through this for the first time. This is where we learn, but we're humans. So we're not robots. We're always going to be prone to mistakes. So
definitely learned a lot from this.
yeah.
So the big thing I have is how do we know what is needing to be done and what didn't? So in my packet, it was a Wells Fargo, and it had basically a document for her to sign up for their preferred payment, and then it had their signature lines and date, and then at the end she's like, well, I don't want any part of that. And there was a part of me that was telling me, well, it's in the packet, it needs to be signed. And then there was another one where I was like, well, no. And I reached out and they basically said that it didn't need to and just skip it. And I'm just like, how would, like, I would be afraid to just skip something. Like, I don't
Um,
know how to proceed
yep,
with that because it was really hard to get a hold of somebody. And I
yep.
was going through basically a chat box and at the mercy of whether or not somebody answered. So how do you get past that? If they hadn't responded like they did with some of the other questions I had, how do you move forward?
Yeah, no, and that's a very good and valid question and point that you're bringing up, Phil, because that's not something that, I mean, I'm seasoned, so I kind of know what to look for. Um, Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's the ACH form, right? Where they take the funds out of their checking account each month to pay for the mortgage. Is that what you're
Yeah,
referring
weekly,
to?
bi-weekly,
Yeah.
semi-monthly. Yeah.
Most times that's not required, it's just an option. So when you get to that form, and there's nothing in the instructions that indicate that form needs to be completed. If on that form do you see either an option to opt in or opt out, you're going to check out either option, whatever they want, and then have them sign in and date it. If it's
Okay.
something that you see the form and it doesn't show you opt in or opt out, put an X because that indicates to the lender that they did review the document and they don't want to sign it, or they don't want to fill it out, but then have them sign the bottom anyway, just saying, okay, I did sign it, I reviewed it, I don't want to enroll in the ACH. That's really one form that's optional. Everything else is pretty mandatory.
Good.
But
And
as
then lastly,
you do more and more
sorry,
of
go ahead.
this, yeah, they won't interrupt you, but once you do more and more of these, you're going to feel comfortable in your own skin. So when you see these documents, you're going to be like, oh, okay, so this is what this form is. ACH, it's not required. How do you want to handle this? And then you move on to the next one.
Okay. And then lastly, on the documents where they have the borrower's name, there was multiple documents and it had borrower and it showed their name. Those aren't to be initialed, are they?
No, you're talking about the affidavit, the signature
It's on
affidavit.
multiple documents or at the bottom of it and
You're talking
it'll
about like
say like,
affidavit of identity.
no. So like where it says for legal purposes down there at the bottom, right there at the
Oh yeah,
bottom left.
yep. No, they don't have to
Uh,
sign. No, these aren't initials or signatures. Unless you see a line there and it says initial, then this is all part of the application. This is not
I
required
remember
for
on some
this.
of the documents that we went through in the course, some of them didn't, Mark was saying that they don't have initial lines. And so that one really hit
Yes,
me.
and you're right because there are some applications that you do need to initial each page. Um, and each lender is different. It's not a common, what's the word? It's not something common that we're going to see every day with our everyday signings, but every once in a blue moon, you may have a lender where you'll see an initial line that they have to initial every single application page. Or if it's the old 1003, where depending on how big their application is, let's say if it goes into like 5 or 6 or 7 pages, then they are signing each page. So it's really depending on what documents are in front of you at the time of the closing to make sure you're capturing all the signatures or initials.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. This was
Thank you.
a really big learning experience. So I hope that helps some people out.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Phil.
Phil, I'm so grateful that you're here today and shared that because I think all of us can relate to the feeling of our first signing and be like, oh my God, like I wish I had someone right next to me to ask questions to, or I know I've heard what to do, but you're in front of the signer, so the stress is up. So all those feelings are completely normal. The first time is the hardest, and I promise it'll get better each and every time. And you being here, asking those questions again because you care and double checking, I mean, it shows just that you are on your road to success and these lessons will come. And so thanks for inspiring others that have yet to take their first signing and reminding others who have done hundreds of signings what it used to feel like and when that first signing came along. So you are not alone. Don't hesitate to always reach out in the complete notary mentorship if you ever need help or want to do a practice together with someone. We got you. So great job, Phil. Awesome. Next, we have Erica, then Brian. Sorry, Erica, right before you ask your question, Alessio, how many more minutes do you have left today?
We can go over. I want to make sure everybody gets their questions,
Okay,
and so we'll do a time check at 8:15 and just see where we're at.
perfect. That sounds great. Erica, then Brian. Hi, Erica.
Hi, sorry. Hi, Alessio. Thank you so much for taking extra time to answer all questions. I actually came into this training with a seller package question. Would that be okay to ask? It's
Uh,
regarding a warranty deed.
we can ask it real quick, and if it's complex, then we may have to table it, and then we can get you that answer.
Sounds good. All
Because
right,
without visuals, it's hard for people to follow.
I understand. I've gotten couple of seller packages with the warranty deed with the date on the first page blank. I've been told by a signing service that the date on the first page, it's the day it gets recorded. And then I've been told by another signing service that that's the day they actually signed the warranty deed. And I'm like, which is it?
Follow whatever they're telling you is what you're gonna do. That's
Okay, and if there are no instructions, do you just recommend me asking whenever that date is blank?
Yeah, I always that page doesn't ever get signed. You're just filling in a date. So even if it's, you're using your own discretion and you're putting the date that they're signing it, because technically that, they're filling it out. It's the sellers that are filling out and signing the deed. It's not the buyers, and they're filling it on the date that you're in front of them. That's the proper date. But each state's a little bit different. Here in New Jersey, we actually don't have to put the date there. So each state's a little bit different. I'll rephrase what I just said. So just follow with whatever your state guidelines are and laws. But what I typically do is if there's no instructions and you can't get anybody to answer that question for you, you can put the date that you're signing, and then you can always replace that page if it's wrong.
Got it. All right, one more quick question is regarding the notice of right to cancel. Mark says on the training that they normally give you 3 copies, like you mentioned, but one of the copies, if the dates are correct or if the signers write the date, then they need to initial those dates. Do you normally do that or only if it's stated on the instructions?
Only if it's stated in the instructions. And I'm
So,
very careful with those initials because then if they say, okay, just make sure they initial the date, I have them do it in the margins. Don't do it within the document, but do it in the margins. So this way there's no indication that if it ever goes to court because they wanted to cancel and they marked up the document, that they're not marking within the document itself, but it's within the margins that they're acknowledging the date.
oh, okay. And like you said, only if you read it in the instructions. If you don't read those about the initials in the instructions, you don't have them initial on the dates.
Correct. It's not a common practice that those initials are needed. Sometimes you're going to see that, but it's rare. But when you do, for example, like just have them initial, make sure it's outside of any I wish to cancel box and it's, like in the margin, and it's not like within the document itself.
And that initial, it's on each date, the transaction
No,
date.
usually it's the rescission date. So whatever date that they want to cancel, sorry, everything just kind of blacked out there for a sec. Right there, you're just having them initial next to September 11th in this example.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thanks, Erica. Hi, Brian. How are you? Thanks for joining today.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
you sound amazing.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing? So this is my first week studying everything. So I'm attending everything. So I got minute questions. Okay, so I seen on the on one of the it said the account, they had to put the account number. They can get it by mail or they can get it by it was what was it? It was mail, account, or savings.
Yeah.
So I was putting myself in the borrower situation. I was thinking, do I need to be a routing number somewhere there, or
So, great question. This is for a credit union, so this one they're not going to be. There's not a routing number because the credit union is actually the funders. So it's all within themselves that are going to be moving the funds either to a savings or checking, or they're going to mail a check. But most times you're going to see the routing number, and you're going to have them fill out the routing number if you see that option.
so I will see. Okay, I just get paranoid because I ain't did nothing yet. So
Yeah.
I got a lot of okay. I appreciate it, man.
I try to be a little different with this one because it's not your typical one. So I just want to make sure you see I wanted everybody to see different variations of the packages. So if you saw any of the other 3 series, they're a little bit different, just so you can kind of just see the different variations that are out there, and you're not seeing the same documents over and over again.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great question.
That was a really great question, Brian. I just dropped the link in the chat to all of the previous ones with Alessio. We did like a purchase, a HELOC, and they all have different documents, which is awesome to see. My biggest tip for you is finish the loan signing system course first, then watch these mock signings. So then it'll make a lot more sense and you'll know how to prepare the signer. But that was a really great question. Thank you so much, Brian.
Okay, we 23% done. I'm making time for it. Appreciate it.
Awesome. No, great job. Thanks for showing up today. I'm so proud of you. And 23% done is what I hear. So you're almost there. Next is Anul. If you could teach me how to say your name.
It's Anna Will.
Anna Will. Hi, Anna Will. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining today. What is your biggest questions for Alessio?
Okay, well, it's a small question. So before I ask my question, this is somebody's real loan application, right? Okay. I noticed that there's 2. I printed it out and I was kind of going along with it, and then I noticed there's 2 copies of like the closing disclosure. Is that normal, or was that like a mistake in this particular packet? Like, is there going to be 2 sets of closing disclosures?
Yep, great question. Definitely not a mistake. This lender particularly wants 2 closing disclosures to be signed and dated by both parties. There's one lender in particular that I know that likes to have 4 closing disclosures signed and dated with wet signatures. So if you, however many copies you see in your printed set of documents, make sure they're all signed and dated. For this example, they have both husband and wife on each closing disclosure. You're going to both have them sign both copies. If there's 2 closing disclosures, one for Christy and then one for Edward, they each sign their own. So you just want to make sure that whatever you see, yeah, it's definitely not a mistake when you see that.
Okay, because I noticed they both say Christy and Edward on it, so I wasn't sure if I could expect to see multiple copies, because I didn't hear this in any of the other like videos or trainings. And then my next question is for page 43. I think somebody asked a question like this, or I don't know if they asked the same exact question, but it's showing the note. It looks like there's 2 Christie's at the top and then Edward's at the bottom. Are we stamping the same page twice, or is there ever a point in time where we're stamping a page twice?
Yes, so in this example, because this lender has 1 notarial act for Christy and 1 notarial act for Edward, so you're going to be stamping each section. You're going to complete both acknowledgements and you're going to be stamping both. Don't stamp one and not the other, because it's going to get rejected.
Okay, because this is the first time I see multiple on one page, but there's a first time for everything. That's it. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great questions. Absolutely. It gets confusing when you see 2 of the same documents and you're like, should I do both or should I take one out for them? But if it's in the packet, do it is my biggest lesson that I've learned from all of these mock signings. So great question. Next is Andy. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we
yes.
can hear
Oh
you.
yeah. All right. I have three quick questions. So like the tax forms, like the 1003 and like the loan application, are they like already pre-filled out for you? Like all
Yeah, these are all going to be pre-filled out. You don't have to sit there and have them fill it out.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And also like the notary instructions, do we like send that in over with the loan docs? Or
Like the first page of the notary instructions.
yeah, or like
Yeah,
all
whatever you print and whatever you have in front of you, you're going to send every single page back.
oh, okay. Okay, so notary instructions in there and just send them along with that. I
Yeah,
check, do I check box those as well?
you can, I don't. Sometimes it does require you to either make sure you're acknowledging them, so you either have to check them off or you have to initial. Make sure you're reading them just to kind of just see it. Like I've seen it where each one of these have like a line to the left of it. And I have to initial every single one of them. So this way I'm reading it and I'm acknowledging whatever I just read. So each one of that, each packet's going to be very different from one to the other. So you just want to make sure you're following whatever instructions are given to you.
Okay. Okay, all right. And then the last question I had was like, is calling like if I had like an urgent question, like on a loan doc, I saw somewhere in the course where I can get like an NNA membership and like I can call a hotline to get an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, they have there's a membership with NNA, and then there's a hotline that you can call with any questions. Now, just so you're aware of it, they're not going to answer any specific loan questions. They're only going to answer like questions on a notarial act or an acknowledgement. I mean, you can ask whatever questions you have, but if it's very specific to the loan itself, they're not going to be able to answer it. So whoever hired you is who you should be calling.
Okay. And don't be annoyed if I like call too much or something like.
No, not at all. They appreciate calls. I mean, I would say they appreciate the calls because they want to make sure that the signings are, you're signing the pages correctly. You're getting all their questions answered. So those calls are appreciative.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. For sure. That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great questions, Andy. Thanks for joining us today. An awesome explanation, Alessio. The NNA hotline is super helpful for the actual notarial act itself, the notary certificate where you put your stamp. But when it comes to the loan documents, call who gave you the signing, and they are more than happy to answer your questions so they know it goes through right. So awesome questions, Andy. We might be cousins. I don't know. We have the same last name. So next is Pamela, and then sorry, next is Dana. Sorry, Pamela. Dana is next, and then Pamela. Hi, Dana.
Hi, quick question for page 43 that had the double notarial stamp but under each person. At the bottom where it says this notarial act was completed and cursed like the check mark, I guess you would check that off. Would I need to initial that in
Nope.
addition to checking off?
No, you can just check it off.
Just check it off. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my only question. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and like let's say if you do an out-of-state package where it's Florida property, for example,
Mhm.
you may see different wordings where it's within the acknowledgement itself or the jurat, or more so the acknowledgement, where it's saying you've conducted this either in person, you check that off, or remotely. So wherever you see the check boxes, you're making sure that you're checking them off correctly.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question, Dana. Thanks for joining us today. Last but not least, we have Pamela, then Phil. Go ahead, ask your biggest questions.
Wait, you're on mute, Pamela. All right.
Thank you, Alessio.
Yeah.
I was having a really nice conversation though.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Those are usually the best conversations, right?
And my dad used to say when I asked him if he was talking to himself, he said, I have to have an intelligent conversation with someone today. So anyway, people have been asking if you could just explain the difference again between the HELOC and the home equity loan. That would be helpful for some people. All of
Yeah,
us.
so the HELOC is going to be your line of credit. So think of it like your credit card. You're applying for a credit card and you're given a credit limit, correct? So with the HELOC, you're using the line of credit, so equity in your home. So as you need money, you can borrow against that equity. And what they do is there's a formula, so it's like 80% of the equity that's in your home is typically what would be available to you minus like your first mortgage. So for example, I'm not feeling math tonight, but let's say your property is worth 500,000 and you have a $400,000 loan. So now you have 100,000 in equity. They'll only give you about 80,000 in your home equity line of credit that you can use against, right? And they'll give you either like checkbooks or like a debit card or both, and then you can use that equity to pay for a roof, or let's say a rainy day and people don't have money in their account, but they need to buy a new roof or a furnace, whatever reason, that money is going to be available to them. They can just use it and they pay it back, and that's going to be a variable. The home equity loans, for example, that same math problem that we just did, let's say they can get up to an $80,000 loan. So that loan now, they're using the equity to take that loan out, and it's a lump sum payment or disbursement that they're getting. It's going to be a fixed rate, not based on prime, but whatever rate they lock in. And they just pay it back like you do as your regular loan, as a mortgage, right? So if we look at the closing disclosure, their loan is for 165, what their monthly principal and interest is, and they have 15 years to pay this loan off.
Okay. I know we have a HELOC as well, and I know that one part is depending on how much equity you do have in your home, you can choose whether you ask them for the entire amount or just a portion of it if you want to do renovations or whatever. Yeah. And I think that the home equity loan, for me, it seems more like it is just a loan, an additional loan, because you're putting basically your home is up as collateral twice. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, that's exactly right. So you basically have your first and your second mortgage. So the loan is going to be a second mortgage that you're paying off. So now you have two liens on the property. With the home equity line of credit, you take from it, you pay it back, and within that 20-year period, you can go back and forth with it. Whereas with the loan, they give you the money and then you're slowly paying it back, but you can't tap into it again. You would have to get another loan.
Yeah, because you only have a certain amount of draw period on that HELOC. Right.
Yep, there could be a 10, 20, 30-year draw period, and then there's a repayment period with the HELOC.
And it's just like any other thing. You can also redo it. Like we've redone ours twice now to extend it more. And that 10-year period starts again each time. So.
Yep, exactly. Or if you refinance, or if people sell their homes, and you have, let me go back and I'll take a step back. If you're refinancing and you have your primary mortgage that you're refinancing and you have a HELOC that's open, they may force you to close that HELOC because they don't want to have all this debt against the house.
Oh.
Or if you have, I'm sorry?
Good to know.
Yeah, yep. Or let's say you drew from your HELOC, or you have a home equity line of or a loan for this session that we just did. When you're refinancing, you're going to be paying off your primary mortgage, and you're going to be paying off your loan because, again, they don't want to have a secondary mortgage when you're refinancing. And then at that point, once you refinance and you have your new loan in place, then you can go ahead and get a HELOC if you want. But there's that's typically what I've been seeing in the past couple of years in these type of situations.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That was
Yep.
great. I thought I knew, but I didn't have it.
Zoe, you're on mute too, but
Yes.
Phil, you're
Awesome.
up.
Thank you. Great question, Pamela. And then Alessio, do you have one time for one last question from Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, Phil.
Thank you. It's super quick. The only thing I have is when you get these documents and you print out one copy for the borrower and one for the company that gave it to you, all those loan instructions, the document instructions, both for whether notary or for the closing agent, does that go with the borrower? Or should I have separated those out?
It's your discretion. They don't need the notary instructions, so what I typically do is I don't give them my notary instructions.
I didn't know, so I
Yeah.
couldn't get a hold of anybody, so I gave them everything.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's not wrong. But it's just they don't really need it. So when I print my copy, I print the full, let's say if it's 100 pages, you're gonna print all 100 pages and that's what you're gonna send back to them. And let's say of those 100 pages, there's 2 pages of notary instructions, then I give them the 98 pages that doesn't include the notary instructions because it's not really a requirement for them.
Yeah, this was like, I think 12 pages total.
Yeah.
And there was only one thing where they wanted me to fill out like who was there at the signing. So I wrote her name and my name. I didn't stamp it, but I just wrote who I was, but I still gave that to her. So the only reason I'm wondering is stuff like that as I'm going through my documents and preparing them, those are something that I can just pull out. That way I'm only going through what I need to. It was a lot.
Yeah, so what I typically do for the notary instructions that are when I'm in front of the client is I paperclip them. So if it doesn't require any signatures or anything like that, just make sure you read them, you paperclip them, and then you just flip them over. You don't have to kind of present it to them.
That was more of the lender's instructions that were part of that.
Yeah, those are typically the closing agent signs it once they get all their documents back, and I paperclip them. I don't go through them with those documents.
But as far as their package though, like should I pull those or just send it if they send it to me?
Yeah, just send it just give it to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great question, Phil. Thank you so much. Alessio, thank you so much for your time today and being able to go through a home equity loan with us because we have not done one of these trainings yet. So if everyone could drop a thank you in the chat for Alessio. I look forward to future trainings with you, Alessio, and I'm so happy that you're part of this community.
Awesome. Thank you.